I think we've probably almost doubled the customer base. We have grown revenues and stuff like that. But actually, we often say that we don't really judge our performance or our success by the profit, but we judge it rather by the difference that we make. And this is something which has been in the Safaricom DNA for very many years, for 18 years. We continue to make a difference, and we hope that we'll continue to do so into the future.
What does shared value mean to you? How has it contributed to Safaricom's success?
Share value, I tend to think about share value as bringing together unlikely players who would ordinarily not be working together. So whether there be players within the private sector, players in the non-profit area, government, and if you bring them together, then you create more value. I tend to prefer the phrase constructive value rather than shared value, although it kind of means the same thing. But constructive value suggests that if you add 1 + 1, you'll get something which is greater than 2. And whether it is the role that a business plays in its society to uplift the society, or it's by bringing two partners together to create some value. I think it's kind of the same thing. And so let me describe it this way. There's no business that can thrive in a society that fails, and therefore it is the role of business to uplift society in general, not just its customers and not just its shareholders. And therefore, when I think of share value, is how do I create a company which adds value to society to make society succeed, and therefore my business succeed.
Right, right. You were talking about shared value and constructive value, and now with the push of financial inclusion, what's coming up next for a product like M-Pesa?
M-Pesa, we spend a lot of time making sure that it's wide. And so we now have 21 million customers. And that's out of a total population, including babies, of about 50 million. So we think we've gone as wide as we can. Our next thing is to go as deep as we can. So how can we use M-Pesa to deepen financial inclusion? Until now, it's been about peer-to-peer, and it's been about payment. How can we create more opportunities for businesses and for the consumer? So we recently launched an overdraft facility, and after a few months, we've actually loaned out about $450 million. Incidentally, in loaning out $450 million, we've actually had like $430 million have been repaid already. So it's not about getting people into debt, but it's about increasing the convenience of customers. Similarly, how do you use this for financing small and micro enterprises, because the banks are not really interested in them? And so these are just a couple of examples of how you'd want to deepen the use of M-Pesa rather than continue to broaden it, because you're kind of running out of the numbers of people who can use M-Pesa.
Right, and that actually brings me to my next question, because the company has contributed to the economy of Kenya, no doubt. But what is the significance, you think, of Safaricom to the Kenyan economy and even to the wider East African region?
We have asked ourselves this question a lot, and we kind of made up the answers. And then we realized that we can't feel comfortable with made-up answers. And so we went to KPMG and asked them to do what was called a true value analysis. And that true value analysis really independently looked at what value did we create in the economy and society. And it showed that our profit, the total value we created was about 10 times the profit that we made. And so you can't measure us by what that number is. And I think this year our profit was about $650 million, something like that. What we found out was that we were creating 10 times the value for society at large, for the economy at large. That equated to about 6.5% of the country's GDP. And we created almost 1 million jobs, almost 900,000 jobs. And so this is how we measure our performance. How did we contribute to society? How do we contribute to the East African community? I mean, that's probably a little bit more limited at the moment until we get some more opportunities to look at the rest of the region.
Right. I know you say you can't measure the value in numbers, but just so that we can talk about them a little bit, you know, the results of the financial year 2018-2019, Safaricom has done very well. And I'm sure that the company is optimistic for the year coming, but what are you planning strategically for the company to continue to enjoy this success and to grow?
So, you know, we have to explore other streams, other revenue streams. If we just relied on voice is flat, SMS is declining, data is slowing up. So we have to look at other ways of generating revenues. And one of them is e-commerce. We started to look at e-commerce, and we're learning quite a lot in that process. And you say, well, is e-commerce just about generating revenues? I think not. I think what e-commerce will do will be to bring the market to the small vendors. So if you're a small vendor manufacturing, you know, say shea butter, for example, how do you get to the market if you've only got 10 people working for you? And we believe that an e-commerce platform will help you to do that. So you come back to this whole thing that we talked about. How can we transform lives? How can we contribute to society? How can we uplift society and create opportunities, which also, by the way, ends up being profitable, as our numbers have shown.
Right. How do you uplift society? I know that Safaricom is the one of the main sponsors of the Shared Value Summit that's coming up in Nairobi in just a couple of weeks. What do you plan to achieve at the summit this year?
What we really hope to see from this summit is we hope to broaden the shared value audience. You know, we've seen some very good progress with South African companies. And we'd like to see more African companies. So we are really pleased to see that it's, you know, for the first year, it's outside of South Africa and here in Nairobi. But it'd be great to bring a broader African stakeholder group into the shared value conversation. So we all understand that the challenges that faces Africa are not challenges which will be addressed purely by governments. These are challenges that take the private sector and the people who I hope will be attending this conference to understand how we can address the challenges of the continent and what opportunities addressing those challenges for the continent will present to businesses.